The moment people realized something was deeply wrong wasn't when Meghan spoke, wasn't when Harry defended her, and wasn't even when the palace went silent. It was when a digital footprint betrayed everything before a single word was officially said. Because 2 days before the world even knew the name of their newborn daughter, someone had already locked down the domain. Not after, not during, before. And that wasn't just preparation, that was calculation.
Tom Bower, the legendary royal author, is sharpening his quill for a new edition of his book set to reveal huge secrets inside Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's marriage.
Now, I choose people who don't want to be written about on the whole, whose lives are shrouded in mystery, and they want to hide their secrets, and I just love digging away to find out what they don't want us to. Meghan is a consummate survival actress. You raised this extraordinary beginning of the year when she carved 2025 in the sand. And you know, it's a very, very interesting image that it came out on New Year's Day this year, because the previous weeks had been absolutely turgid and torrid for her. She had been dubbed Duchess Difficult again. There have been allegations of bullying.
Tyrant in high heels.
Meghan herself.
And Meghan herself.
In the months before she met Harry, was setting up paparazzi pictures in London. She now acts as if the paparazzi are literally the devil incarnate.
She begged the paparazzi to photograph her, and they wouldn't. And when they did, she says, "Oh, I don't want to, I'm hurt." And that ridiculous story about how they first met, the whole thing was a tissue of inaccuracies, to be polite.
Because what do you make of that? Because as you know, Harry was always very insistent.
Tom, do you think Harry and Meghan are fast learning what they signed away when they took this Netflix big moolah? And I would say they signed away their credibility and their dignity.
Well, that's our view, but it's not theirs. They need the money, and they need it now more than ever because they've got no other source of income. So I think they're just stuck with the devil now. They're tied to Netflix, they're tied to their book, and all the criticism they're going to take means nothing because that's the only way they can earn their money. But what they need to do is face up to the blackmail that's coming from California and in some way or other undermine Harry's and Meghan's credibility.
2 days before the public announcement, before the Queen herself had even been properly informed, before family conversations had settled into emotional reality, the business infrastructure was already secured. And that's when insiders began whispering a terrifying question: who was really in control here? Because this wasn't how royal families operated. This wasn't tradition. This wasn't emotional instinct. This was branding. Strategic, clinical, executed without hesitation. And that single action exposed something Tom Bower spent 2 years quietly uncovering, something far more disturbing than the public ever realized.
He actually monetized the Queen's name, and I find that alone is pretty damning of her.
He wasn't guessing. He wasn't speculating. He was documenting. 80 sources, 80 different people, some of them terrified, some of them legally restricted, some of them unwilling to ever say their names publicly. But together, they painted a portrait that shattered the carefully crafted image millions had already accepted as truth. Because behind the interviews, behind the smiles, behind the emotional speeches, there was another narrative unfolding in silence. A narrative about control, reinvention, and elimination.
And even the publishers couldn't quite believe some of the things which I discovered. And one of the big things at that time was sensitivity reading. There was a great fear that she would play the race card.
There were entire chapters he couldn't publish, not because they weren't real, but because the law itself protected secrets too explosive to expose without consequences. Allegations about yacht parties, powerful men, exclusive circles where influence wasn't just social, it was transactional, connections forged in shadows. Access gained through proximity, and insiders who whispered the same chilling phrase again and again: her past wasn't just private, it was erased, systematically, completely. But the domain registration revealed something deeper than past rumors ever could.
Of course, I knew very well that she was being pimped.
It revealed priority, because when Harry finally called his grandmother, when he finally shared the name Lilibet, he wasn't asking, he was announcing. And the Queen, the woman whose personal nickname had been used, wasn't reacting to a loving tribute. She was reacting to the method, the sequence, the execution, because the brand had been secured before the blessing was given. And suddenly, everything made sense. Because Harry had spent his entire life inside an institution where commercialization was an instinct, it was forbidden. He wasn't thinking about domains. He wasn't thinking about intellectual property. He wasn't thinking about monetization. But Meghan had spent her entire life building identity as currency. Every blog, every photo, every connection, every calculated step designed to elevate position. She didn't think like royalty. She thought like a strategist. And a royal baby's name tied directly to the Queen herself wasn't just emotional symbolism. It was commercial gold, merchandising potential, media leverage, brand authority, global recognition locked into a single word. And that's when insiders realized something terrifying. Family sentiment had become secondary to strategic positioning. Infrastructure first, emotional courtesy second. And Harry, isolated from everything he'd ever known, was drifting deeper into a world he didn't fully understand. Because isolation didn't begin in California. It began long before. It began when friendships started disappearing. When people who knew Harry best, the ones who grew up beside him, slowly vanished from his inner circle. Not gradually, not naturally, but abruptly. After confrontations, after tension, after Meghan's discomfort with their presence. And suddenly, invitations stopped. Phone calls stopped, access stopped, until Harry's world shrank to a single approved voice. And this wasn't new behavior, it was a pattern. A pattern Tom Bauer had traced years before Harry ever appeared in Meghan's life. Relationships that ended when usefulness expired. Connections discarded when advancement required distance. Identity reshaped to match opportunity. Because reinvention wasn't survival, reinvention was strategy. Even Diana's legacy became part of that transformation. The jewelry wasn't just sentimental, it was symbolic positioning. Each public appearance carefully layered with visual association. Diana's watch, Diana's bracelets, Diana's presence projected through aesthetic replication, because visual symbolism triggers emotional memory. And emotional memory builds loyalty faster than truth ever could. But what Meghan never understood, what insiders say she fundamentally miscalculated, was that Diana's legacy wasn't built on appearance. It was built on sacrifice, on presence, on authenticity that couldn't be replicated through accessories. Because you can wear someone's jewelry, but you can't inherit their soul. And while the public watched the image, Tom Bauer watched the pattern. He watched contradictions pile up. He watched narratives shift. He watched relationships collapse. He watched Hollywood embrace and then quietly distance itself. Because behind closed doors, industry figures were already seeing something the public hadn't yet realized. They weren't witnessing integration. They were witnessing disruption. And the most explosive moment came when 50 million people sat down to watch the interview that would redefine everything. Because what appeared to be emotional truth, Bauer claims, was something far more calculated. 17 claims that didn't align with verified timelines. 17 emotional anchors designed to reshape perception. 17 moments that altered global opinion overnight. And Harry, the man who once embodied royal stability, said nothing. Because silence became complicity. Because silence became confirmation. Because silence became irreversible. And now, as Bauer prepares to release even more revelations, insiders are whispering the same terrifying reality the public hasn't even seen the worst of it yet. By the time the Oprah interview aired, the damage wasn't just emotional, it was nuclear. 50 million people watching, 50 million people absorbing every word as gospel, every pause, every tear. Every carefully delivered sentence reshaping the global perception of the monarchy itself. And in that moment, Meghan wasn't just telling her story, she was rewriting history in real time. Because one of the most powerful claims she made was also one of the most devastating to unravel. She said they were secretly married 3 days before the royal wedding. Just them, just love, just truth. A private backyard ceremony hidden from the world. It sounded intimate, it sounded romantic, it sounded authentic, but it wasn't real. Because the Archbishop himself later confirmed the truth, it wasn't a marriage. It was a rehearsal, a symbolic moment, not a legal union. And suddenly, what millions believed to be a hidden act of rebellion became something else entirely. A narrative device. A carefully crafted emotional illusion designed to make the public feel like the royal wedding wasn't real, like the monarchy itself was theater, and Meghan and Harry were its unwilling actors. But that wasn't the only fracture in the story. Tom Bauer began dissecting every timeline, every claim, every emotional beat, and he found contradictions buried beneath sympathy. Conversations that didn't align with documented reality. Moments presented as cause and effect that never happened in that sequence at all. And once you notice one inconsistency, you begin noticing them everywhere. Because narratives built on emotional persuasion don't rely on factual precision, they rely on emotional impact. And that's when insiders began revealing something even more disturbing. The victim narrative wasn't spontaneous. It was constructed, carefully layered, designed to create global protection. Because once the public believes you've been wronged, they stop questioning your actions. They stop analyzing your contradictions. They defend you automatically. And that shield, that emotional armor, became Meghan's most powerful weapon. But while the public was defending, Hollywood was watching. And Hollywood wasn't emotional. Hollywood was strategic. Because behind closed doors, relationships were beginning to fracture. Edward Enninful, one of the most powerful figures in fashion, initially welcomed Meghan into the prestigious world of British Vogue. He gave her access, he gave her influence, he gave her the opportunity to shape culture itself. But Meghan didn't just participate, she attempted to control. She didn't want collaboration, she wanted authority. She didn't want inclusion, she wanted dominance. And when Enninful pushed back, when he refused to surrender editorial control, everything collapsed. The relationship ended not with a public scandal, but with silent rejection, the most dangerous kind. Because in Hollywood, doors don't slam shut loudly, they close quietly, permanently, without explanation. Journalist Sam Kashner described the experience in 4 devastating words: manipulated, betrayed, played, orchestrated. Words that echoed through elite circles like a warning signal. Because once trust is broken at that level, recovery becomes impossible. And suddenly, invitations stopped arriving. Calls stopped being returned. Opportunities stopped appearing. Not because of public controversy, but because of private calculation. Because Hollywood protects access above everything else. And being associated too closely with someone seen as unpredictable, someone seen as capable of reshaping narratives without warning, becomes a liability. And then came the financial unraveling. The Netflix deals that were supposed to redefine their independence began losing momentum. The Spotify partnership that symbolized their cultural relevance collapsed entirely. Projects stalled, promises evaporated, and insiders began whispering the same brutal truth: the brand wasn't generating trust, it was generating caution. Because branding only works when the audience believes the identity is authentic. And once doubt enters the equation, everything begins to rot from within. But perhaps the most terrifying revelation wasn't financial, it was personal. Because Harry, once surrounded by lifelong friendships, once protected by family structure, once anchored by institutional stability, was now alone in California. His old support network gone, his old identity dissolved, his old world unreachable. And isolation isn't always forced. Sometimes isolation is engineered, gradually, subtly, until the person doesn't realize they've lost everything, until there's nothing left to return to. Tom Bauer recognized this pattern immediately, because Meghan had done it before. Relationships that ended when they no longer served her evolution. Family ties severed without hesitation. Friends erased from existence. Every chapter closed once its usefulness expired. Reinvention wasn't just survival. Reinvention was elimination. And now, with Revenge 2 preparing to expose what couldn't legally be published before, insiders are panicking. Because the first book was only what the law allowed. The second book threatens to reveal what the law once protected. Stories from sources who couldn't speak before. Details buried beneath legal barriers. Connections too dangerous to print, until now. Because the domain registration wasn't just preparation, it was evidence of mindset. The Oprah interview wasn't just emotional testimony, it was narrative construction. The isolation wasn't just coincidence, it was strategic separation. And the collapse of Hollywood relationships wasn't just bad luck, it was consequence. And the most chilling realization of all is that Meghan didn't just enter the royal family, she entered it with a plan. A plan built on branding, a plan built on perception, a plan built on control. Because in the end, the most powerful weapon isn't influence, it's the ability to reshape reality itself. And Tom Bauer believes the world is only beginning to see the truth.